The rain hammered down like nails against metal. Thunder rolled across the valley, deep and threatening, shaking the ground beneath Cruz's boots. He pressed his radio close to his mouth, shouting over the roar of wind and water. "We need another team on the North Ridge. Now!" His voice cracked with urgency. Beside him, his rescue dog, a German shepherd named Blaze, stood rigid, ears pinned back, muscles coiled tight. The dog's amber eyes locked onto something in the distance, a dark wall of earth and debris sliding, collapsing, swallowing everything in its path. Cruz reached for Blaze's collar, but the dog didn't move. He just stared, and then, without warning, Blaze bolted, straight toward the rubble, straight toward the danger. Cruz's heart stopped. He screamed the dog's name, but the sound was lost in the storm. What he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that beneath 20 feet of mud and stone a man was still breathing. But what Blaze uncovered wasn't just a survivor. It was a story no one saw coming. 3 days before the landslide, the town of Green Ridge was a place where nothing much ever happened. Nestled in the foothills of the Cascade Range, it was the kind of community where everyone knew everyone, where the diner served the same pie every Thursday, and where the fire station doubled as the town's heartbeat. Cruz Delgado had been a firefighter there for 12 years. He was lean, quiet, with hands scarred from rope burns and eyes that had seen too many close calls. But he wasn't the type to talk about it. He let his work speak for him. Blaze was his partner, a 3-year-old German shepherd with a coat like burned copper and a nose that could track a scent through snow, smoke, or water. Cruz had trained him from a pup, spent every evening running drills in the fields behind the station, teaching him to find people buried under rubble, lost in the woods, or trapped in collapsed buildings. Blaze wasn't just a dog, he was a tool, a lifeline, and Cruz trusted him more than he trusted most people. The bond between them had been forged through countless hours of training, through late nights and early mornings, through failures and successes. Cruz remembered the first time Blaze had successfully located a training dummy buried under concrete blocks, the way the dog had circled, sniffed, then sat with such confidence, such certainty. That moment had told Cruz everything he needed to know. This dog was special. This dog would save lives. The morning of the storm, Cruz woke to the smell of rain. It wasn't the soft kind, it was heavy, oppressive, the kind that seeped into your bones. He stood at the window of his small apartment above the station, watching the sky darken to the color of old bruises. The meteorologist on the radio called it a historic weather event. Cruz called it trouble. He pulled on his uniform, laced his boots, and headed downstairs. Blaze was already awake, waiting by the door, tail low, eyes alert. The dog knew. Animals always did. Cruz scratched behind his ears and grabbed the go bag from the hook. "Looks like we're in for a long one, boy." The station was already buzzing. Captain Reyes stood at the map board, marking evacuation zones with red marker. His face was grim. "We've got flash flood warnings up and down the valley. The northern ridge is saturated. If it gives way, we're looking at a debris flow that could take out half the lower district." He tapped the map. "We're setting up a staging area here. Cruz, you and Blaze take the high ground. I want eyes on that ridge." Cruz nodded. He clipped Blaze's vest on, a bright orange harness with reflective strips and the words, "Search and Rescue," stitched across the back. The dog stood still, patient, professional. Cruz could feel the tension in the air, the way everyone moved just a little faster, spoke a little quieter. This wasn't a drill. By midday, the rain was relentless. The roads turned to rivers. The creek that ran through town swelled into a churning brown torrent, dragging branches and trash cans downstream. Families evacuated to the community center. The elderly were shuttled out in vans. Cruz and Blaze stood on the ridge, watching the valley below disappear into fog and rain. The ground was soft beneath his boots. Too soft. Cruz radioed in. "Ridge is unstable. I'm seeing cracks in the soil. We need to pull back." Captain Reyes's voice crackled through. "Copy that. Hold your position for 5 more minutes. We're moving the last group now." Blaze stood at the edge, nose to the wind. His ears twitched. Something was wrong. Cruz felt it too. A low hum in the earth. A tremor that wasn't quite sound, wasn't quite movement. Just wrongness. And then the ridge gave way. It didn't happen all at once. It started with a sound like tearing fabric, deep, guttural, as if the earth itself was ripping apart. Cruz turned just in time to see a section of the ridge collapse inward, a massive chunk of soil and rock sliding down toward the valley. Trees tilted and fell like matchsticks. Boulders tumbled end over end, crashing into the forest below. the air filled with the smell of wet dirt and broken wood. "Go, go, go!" Cruz shouted into his radio. He grabbed Blaze's vest and pulled him back from the edge. The dog resisted for a moment, still staring at the landslide, but Cruz yanked harder. "Move!" They ran. The ground beneath them shifted, buckling and cracking. Cruz's boots slipped in the mud. He caught himself against a tree, kept moving. Blaze was faster, bounding ahead, his powerful legs carrying him over roots and rocks. Cruz's lungs burned. His radio was screaming with voices, panicked, overlapping, desperate. He couldn't make out the words. When they reached solid ground, Cruz dropped to his knees, gasping. Blaze circled back, panting, eyes wide. Cruz reached out and gripped the dog's vest, holding him close. "Good boy, good boy." His voice shook. He looked back at the ridge. Where there had been forest and trail, there was now a gaping wound, a raw scar of mud and debris stretching down into the valley. The landslide had buried the lower district, homes, roads, everything. Cruz stood slowly, his legs trembling. He keyed his radio. "This is Delgado. The ridge is gone. Repeat, the ridge is gone. We've got a major slide. Multiple structures affected. I'm heading down now." Captain Reyes responded immediately. "Negative. Do not approach the slide area. It's not stable. Wait for the full team." But Cruz was already moving. Blaze was already ahead of him, picking his way down the slope, nose low, tail straight. Cruz followed. The rain pounded his helmet. Water streamed down his face, into his collar, soaking through his jacket. He didn't care. People were down there, trapped, buried, maybe alive. As they descended, the scale of the disaster became clear. The landslide had carved a path of destruction half a mile wide. Houses were crushed, roofs caved in, walls torn away. A minivan lay on its side, half buried in mud. A child's swing set hung from the branches of a fallen oak. The air was thick with dust and rain, and the only sound was the hiss of water and the distant wail of sirens. Cruz reached the edge of the debris field and stopped. Blaze was already working, moving in a grid pattern, nose to the ground, ears forward. The dog was methodical, trained, precise. Cruz followed, stepping carefully over shattered beams and twisted metal. His radio buzzed with updates. Rescue teams mobilizing, heavy equipment en route, medical units standing by. But Cruz wasn't listening. He was watching Blaze. The dog stopped. His body went rigid, his head lifted, nose twitching. Then he barked, a sharp, urgent sound. Cruz's pulse quickened. "What is it, boy? What do you got?" Blaze moved toward a pile of rubble, concrete slabs, rebar, chunks of drywall. He circled once, then sat. The signal. Someone was there. Cruz keyed his radio. "I've got a hit. Sending coordinates now." He pulled out his marker spray and tagged the spot with a bright orange X. Then he knelt beside Blaze, running his hand along the dog's back. "Good boy, good work." But Blaze didn't relax. He stood again, pacing, whining softly. His tail was low. His eyes darted back and forth. Something was off. Cruz frowned. "What's wrong?" Blaze barked again, louder this time, and moved to a different section of the rubble, 20 feet away, deeper into the debris field. He stopped, sniffed, barked. Cruz followed. "You got another one?" But this didn't make sense. Blaze was trained to stay with a find until Cruz gave the release command. The dog never moved on, unless told to. And yet here he was, alerting on a second location, then a third, his movements frantic, almost desperate. Cruz's stomach tightened. "Easy, Blaze, easy." He followed the dog to the third spot, a collapsed garage, half buried under a cascade of earth and stone. Blaze sat again, but this time he didn't stay still. He pawed at the ground, whining, his eyes locked on Cruz. Cruz knelt beside him. "Someone's down there!" Blaze barked. Once, sharp, clear. Cruz radioed for backup. "I need a second unit on my location. We've got multiple possibles. Bring the heavy tools." But as he waited, staring at the pile of rubble, something nagged at him. The way Blaze was acting, the way the dog kept looking back, kept circling, kept pawing at the ground. It wasn't normal. It wasn't protocol. Cruz placed his hand flat against the concrete slab. He closed his eyes, focused, and then he felt it. A faint vibration, a rhythm, a pulse. Someone was alive down there. But it wasn't just one person. It was something more. Something Blaze could sense but Cruz couldn't yet understand. And the clock was already ticking. The first rescue team arrived within 20 minutes. 4 firefighters, 2 paramedics, and a structural engineer named Kim, who looked like she hadn't slept in days. She carried a tablet loaded with blueprints and satellite imagery, her boots caked in mud. Cruz met her at the edge of the debris field, pointing to the 3 marked locations. "My dog alerted on all 3, Cruz said, "but he's acting strange, keeps going back to this one." He gestured toward the collapsed garage. "I think there's someone alive under there." Kim pulled up the pre-slide map on her tablet. "That's the old Mercer property. Single-story house, detached garage. Owner's name is Thomas Mercer, 73 years old, lives alone." She looked up. "You sure your dog's got a hit?" Cruz glanced at Blaze, who sat a few feet away, eyes locked on the rubble. "He's sure," Kim nodded. "All right, let's get started. But we go slow. This whole area's unstable. One wrong move and we could trigger a secondary slide." The team moved in. They worked with hydraulic jacks and pry bars, lifting slabs of concrete inch by inch, stabilizing the structure with wooden braces. The rain continued, lighter now but steady, turning the debris field into a slick, treacherous maze. Cruz stayed close to Blaze, letting the dog guide them, watching for any sign of change. The dog's nose never stopped moving, sniffing, tracking, locking onto something Cruz couldn't see or smell. An hour passed, then 2. They cleared the first layer of debris, plywood, insulation, chunks of drywall. Beneath it, they found a steel beam, bent but intact, wedged at an angle. Kim crouched beside it, running her hands along the surface. "This might be holding up the rest of the structure. If we move it wrong, everything collapses." "Can we cut through?" Cruz asked. "Not without risking a cave-in." Kim stood, wiping rain from her face. "We need to shore it up first." While the team worked, Cruz pulled Blaze aside, giving him water and a quick check. The dog was panting hard, his tongue lolling, but his eyes were still sharp, still focused. Cruz ran his hand down Blaze's back, checking for injuries. Nothing. The dog was fine, just intense. "You really think someone's alive down there?" one of the paramedics asked. She was young, maybe mid-20s, with dark hair pulled into a tight bun. Her name tag read Santos. Cruz nodded. "Blaze doesn't give false alerts. If he says someone's there, they're there. But it's been hours," Santos said. "Even if they survived the initial collapse, the chances of—" "They're alive," Cruz said, cutting her off. His voice was flat, certain. "We just have to get to them." Santos looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, let's keep moving." By the 4th hour, they'd cleared enough debris to expose the garage's foundation. The walls were gone, the roof crushed flat, but the concrete slab beneath was intact. And beneath that slab, according to Kim's calculations, was a crawl space, a narrow gap between the foundation and the earth, just big enough for a person. Cruz's radio crackled. Captain Reyes's voice came through, tight and controlled. "Delgado, we've got reports of another potential slide on the East Ridge. We're pulling non-essential personnel back. How's your situation?" Cruz looked at the half-cleared rubble, at Blaze sitting patiently nearby, at the team working in silence. "We're close, Captain. We've got someone down there. I can feel it." A pause. Then, "You've got 30 minutes. After that, you pull out. No exceptions." "Copy that." Cruz turned to Kim. "We need to move faster." She didn't look up. "We move faster. We risk killing whoever's down there." "We don't move faster, we lose them anyway." Kim exhaled slowly, then nodded. "All right, let's do this." They repositioned the jacks, braced the beam, and began lifting the foundation slab. It was slow, agonizing work. Every inch required coordination, every movement calculated. Cruz's hands ached, his back screamed, but he didn't stop. None of them did. The metal groaned. The concrete shifted. Dust filled the air, mixing with rain, creating a grey fog that made it hard to see, hard to breathe. Cruz could hear his own heartbeat in his ears, feel the adrenaline coursing through his veins. This was the moment. This was when everything would either come together or fall apart. And then, finally, they heard it. A sound, faint, barely audible over the rain and the groan of shifting metal. A voice. "Help!" Everyone froze. Santos dropped to her knees, pressing her ear against the gap they'd created. "Hello? Can you hear me? My name is Maria. I'm a paramedic. We're going to get you out. Can you tell me your name?" Silence. Then, weaker than before. Thomas Mercer." Cruz's chest tightened. He looked at Blaze. The dog's tail wagged once, slowly. "Good boy." Kim moved quickly, adjusting the jacks, creating a wider opening. Santos grabbed her medical kit and crawled into the gap, disappearing into the darkness. Cruz held his breath. Seconds stretched into minutes. Then Santos's voice came through, muffled but clear. "I've got him. He's conscious, dehydrated. Possible broken ribs. But he's alive. A cheer went up from the team. Cruz closed his eyes, letting the relief wash over him. They'd done it. They'd found him. But then Santos spoke again, her voice tense. Wait, there's something else down here. Cruz's eyes snapped open. What do you mean? There's a second person, a kid, maybe 12, 13, unconscious. I need more light. Get them both out, Cruz said, his voice hard. Now. The team moved. They widened the gap, brought in portable lights, passed down oxygen masks and blankets. Santos worked quickly, stabilizing Thomas Mercer, then turning to the boy. Cruz couldn't see what was happening, but he could hear Santos's voice, calm and steady, talking to both of them, keeping them conscious, keeping them alive. The extraction took another 20 minutes, carefully lifting Thomas out first, his body limp but breathing, his eyes fluttering open as they placed him on the stretcher. Then the boy, smaller, lighter, but just as fragile. The paramedics worked with precision, checking vitals, administering fluids, wrapping them in thermal blankets. 20 minutes later, they pulled Thomas out first, an old man with white hair and a face covered in dust and blood. He was shaking, barely able to stand, but his eyes were open. He grabbed Cruz's arm as they lifted him onto the stretcher. "The boy?" he rasped. "You have to save the boy." "We're getting him," Cruz said. "Just hang on." They pulled the boy out next. He was small, thin, with dark hair matted with dirt. His clothes were torn, his face pale. Santos checked his pulse, his breathing. "He's stable, but we need to get him to a hospital. Now." As the paramedics loaded both survivors into the ambulance, Cruz stood beside Blaze, watching them go. The dog sat quietly, his work done. Cruz knelt beside him, scratching behind his ears. "You did good, boy. Real good." But as the ambulance pulled away, Cruz couldn't shake the feeling that something was still wrong. The way Thomas had looked at him, the desperation in his voice. The boy. Who was he? Why was he in the crawl space with Thomas? And why did Blaze keep staring at the rubble even now, as if there was something more? Cruz stood, his mind racing. He looked at Kim. "Did you find any ID on the kid?" She shook her head. "Nothing. No wallet, no phone, just the clothes on his back." Cruz frowned. "Run a check. See if anyone in town reported a missing child." Kim nodded and pulled out her radio. Cruz turned back to Blaze. The dog was still staring at the rubble, still tense, still alert. "What is it, boy?" Cruz whispered. "What else is down there?" Blaze barked once, sharp, urgent. And Cruz knew this wasn't over, not even close. The hospital was a 20-minute drive from Greenridge, a small regional facility with flickering fluorescent lights and linoleum floors that smelled like disinfectant and stale coffee. Cruz arrived just after midnight, still in his muddy uniform, Blaze at his side. The nurse at the front desk looked up, startled. "Sir, you can't bring a dog in here." Cruz pulled out his badge. "He's a certified rescue animal. I need to speak with Thomas Mercer and the boy we brought in earlier." The nurse hesitated, then nodded. "Room 214 and 216, but the boy's still unconscious. The doctors are with him now." Cruz headed down the hall, Blaze trotting beside him. He stopped at room 214 and knocked softly. A voice called out, weak but clear. "Come in." Thomas Mercer was sitting up in bed, an IV line running into his arm, a bandage wrapped around his forehead. He looked older than his 73 years, gaunt, exhausted, his eyes red-rimmed. But when he saw Cruz, he smiled. "You're the one who found us." Cruz nodded. "My dog did most of the work." He gestured to Blaze, who sat obediently by the door. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck," Thomas said with a dry laugh. "But I'm alive, thanks to you." Cruz pulled a chair over and sat down. "Can you tell me what happened? How you and the boy ended up in the crawl space?" Thomas's smile faded. He looked down at his hands, his fingers trembling. "The boy's name is Daniel Reyes." Cruz's stomach dropped. "Reyes, Captain Reyes. He's the captain's nephew." Thomas nodded. "His sister's kid. Lives up in Seattle. Daniel's been staying with me for the summer, helping me with the house, keeping me company. He's a good kid, quiet, smart." His voice broke. "When the storm started, I knew we were in trouble. The creek behind my house was rising fast. I told Daniel we needed to get out, but by the time we grabbed our things, the road was already flooded. We couldn't leave." He paused, his eyes distant. "And then I heard it, that sound, like the world was tearing apart. I looked out the window and saw the ridge collapsing. I didn't think. I just grabbed Daniel and pulled him into the crawl space under the garage. It was the only place I could think of that might hold up." He looked at Cruz. I didn't know if it would work. I didn't know if we'd make it." Cruz leaned forward. "But you did. Barely." Thomas's voice was barely a whisper now. "The house came down around us, everything. The walls, the roof, the garage, it all just crushed in. I could feel the weight pressing down, hear the metal groaning. I thought we were done." He looked up, his eyes wet. "But then I heard barking. A dog. I didn't know if I was imagining it, if I was already dying, but I heard it, and I knew someone was looking for us." Cruz felt his throat tighten. He reached out and placed a hand on Thomas's shoulder. "You did everything right. You saved that boy's life." Thomas shook his head. "No, you saved us. You and your dog." The weight of those words hung in the air between them. Cruz glanced at Blaze, who was watching Thomas with quiet intensity. The old man's hand reached out slowly, trembling, and Blaze moved closer, allowing Thomas to rest his palm on the dog's head. For a moment, they stayed like that, three souls connected by survival, by instinct, by something deeper than words could express. Thomas's fingers curled gently into Blaze's fur. "I kept talking to Daniel down there, kept telling him stories about my wife, God rest her soul, about the garden we used to keep, about the first time I saw snow, anything to keep him awake, keep him focused." His voice cracked, but he started fading. His breathing got shallow. "I thought I was going to lose him, and then your dog started barking, and I just knew, we had a chance." Cruz stood, his mind still racing with questions, with the enormity of what had happened. But before he could speak, Thomas continued. "There's something else you should know," Thomas said, his voice dropping lower. "When the house started coming down, Daniel wasn't supposed to be there. He'd gone out earlier that morning, said he was going to check on the trails, take some photos, but he came back. He came back because he was worried about me. A 13-year-old kid, and he came back into danger because he didn't want me to be alone." The words hit Cruz like a physical blow. This boy, Daniel, had made a choice, had walked back into the path of the landslide to make sure an old man wouldn't face the storm alone, and that choice had nearly cost him his life. Cruz felt a surge of emotion he couldn't quite name. Pride, sorrow, a fierce protectiveness. "He's going to be okay," Cruz said, though he wasn't sure if he was reassuring Thomas or himself. "The doctors say he'll be fine." Thomas nodded slowly. "He's a brave kid, braver than most adults I know." He looked at Cruz with those tired, grateful eyes. "But he wouldn't have made it without you. Without Blaze, you gave him a future." Cruz left the room feeling heavier than when he'd entered. He walked to room 216, where Daniel lay sleeping, his chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. The monitors beeped softly. An IV drip hung beside the bed. His face was peaceful now, the fear and pain washed away by medication and exhaustion. Cruz stood at the foot of the bed, Blaze beside him. The dog's ears perked forward, his eyes tracking the small movements of Daniel's breathing. It was as if Blaze was still on duty, still watching, still protecting. A nurse entered quietly, checking the monitors, making notes on a clipboard. She glanced at Cruz, then at Blaze. "He woke up about an hour ago," she said softly. "Asked if the dog was real, asked if someone had really found them." She smiled. "I told him yes, told him he was safe now." Cruz nodded, unable to speak. The nurse left, and Cruz stood there in the quiet of the hospital room, listening to the beep of machines, the whisper of air conditioning, the sound of life continuing. He thought about all the calls he'd responded to over the years, all the fires, the accidents, the rescues, some successful, some not. He thought about the ones who didn't make it, the families he'd had to face with nothing but bad news and empty condolences, and he thought about this moment, this boy, this old man, alive, because Blaze had refused to stop searching. Blaze shifted beside him, a soft whine escaping his throat. Cruz looked down. The dog was staring at Daniel, tail wagging slowly, as if he understood exactly what they'd accomplished. "Yeah, boy," Cruz whispered. "We got him." "We got them both." As Cruz turned to leave, Daniel's eyes fluttered open. The boy looked disoriented for a moment, his gaze sweeping the room before landing on Cruz and Blaze. You're the one," Daniel said, his voice hoarse and weak. Cruz moved closer to the bed. "Yeah, how are you feeling?" "Tired. Scared." Daniel's eyes filled with tears. "Is Mr. Mercer okay?" "He's fine. In the room next door. Asking about you." Daniel's lower lip trembled. "I thought we were going to die. It was so dark, so heavy I couldn't breathe. And Mr. Mercer kept talking to me, telling me to stay awake, but I was so tired." His voice broke into a sob. Cruz sat on the edge of the bed, placing a gentle hand on Daniel's shoulder. "You're safe now. You both are." Daniel reached out toward Blaze, his hand shaking. The dog moved closer, resting his head on the bed, and Daniel's fingers sank into his fur. "He found us," Daniel whispered. "I heard him barking. I thought I was dreaming. But he was real." "He's real," Cruz confirmed. "His name is Blaze." Daniel looked at the dog with wonder, tears streaming down his face. "Thank you," he whispered to Blaze. "Thank you for not giving up on us." Blaze's tail wagged once, and in that moment, Cruz saw something beautiful, a connection between a boy and a dog, forged in the darkest moment of the boy's life. A reminder that sometimes salvation comes on four paws, with a bark and a wagging tail. The days following the landslide were a blur of activity. The town of Greenridge mobilized like never before. Volunteers clearing debris, construction crews rebuilding homes, donations pouring in from neighboring communities. The local news ran stories about the disaster, about the families displaced, the homes lost, the lives shattered. But they also ran stories about the rescues, about the firefighters and paramedics who worked through the storm, about the dog who found two people buried under 20 feet of rubble. Cruz tried to avoid the attention. He wasn't the type to seek the spotlight, but everywhere he went, people recognized him. They stopped him on the street, thanked him, shook his hand. A local coffee shop put up a sign that read, "Free coffee for Cruz and Blaze." The mayor called him a hero. The newspaper ran a front-page story with a photo of Cruz and Blaze standing in front of the debris field. The headline reading, "Local firefighter and rescue dog saved 2 lives in landslide disaster." Cruz threw the paper away, but he kept the photo. Just one copy, folded carefully and tucked into his wallet, a reminder of the day everything could have gone wrong, but didn't. Thomas Mercer was released from the hospital after 3 days. He had no home to return to, so the town set him up in temporary housing, a small apartment with basic furnishings and a view of the mountains. Daniel stayed with Captain Reyes and his sister Elena, recovering slowly, his strength returning day by day. The physical wounds healed faster than the emotional ones. Daniel had nightmares, vivid, terrifying dreams of being crushed, of suffocating in darkness. He'd wake up screaming, drenched in sweat, and Elena would hold him, rock him, tell him he was safe. But the fear lingered. The trauma ran deep. Thomas struggled too. He'd lost everything. His home, his possessions, the memories of 50 years of living in the same house, the place where he'd raised his children, where he'd grown old with his wife, where he'd planned to spend his final years. All of it was gone, buried under tons of mud and debris. But both of them had something precious: life, a second chance, and neither of them took that lightly. A week after the rescue, Captain Reyes invited Cruz to his house for dinner. It was a small, modest home on the edge of town, with a well-kept lawn and a porch swing that creaked in the breeze. Daniel answered the door, looking healthier now, his bruises fading, his eyes brighter. "Hey, Cruz, come in." Cruz stepped inside, Blaze at his side. The house smelled like roasted chicken and garlic bread. Reyes was in the kitchen, setting the table, his sister beside him, a woman in her 40s with Daniel's dark hair and sharp eyes. She turned when Cruz entered, her face breaking into a smile. "You must be Cruz. I've heard so much about you." Cruz shook her hand. "Nice to meet you, ma'am. Please, call me Elena." She gestured to the table. "Sit. Your family now." They ate together, the conversation light, easy. Daniel told stories about the summer he'd spent with Thomas Mercer, about the projects they'd worked on, the books they'd read. He talked about the vegetable garden they'd planted, how Thomas had taught him to identify different bird calls, how they'd spent evenings on the porch watching the sun set over the valley. "He's like a grandfather to me," Daniel said quietly, his fork pausing midway to his mouth. "My real grandpa died when I was little, but Mr. Mercer, he's been there, teaching me things, listening when I talk." He looked at Cruz. "When the landslide happened, I was so scared, but he kept me calm, kept telling me we'd be okay, that someone would find us." Eleanor reached over and squeezed Daniel's hand. Her eyes were wet. "I'll never forget the call I got from my brother when he told me Daniel was missing, that he might be buried in the slide." She couldn't finish. She just shook her head, wiping at her eyes. Captain Reyes cleared his throat. "Cruz and Blaze didn't just save 2 lives. They saved this family. They saved me from losing my nephew. They saved Elena from losing her son." He looked at Cruz, his expression serious. There aren't words for that kind of gratitude. Cruz felt uncomfortable under the weight of their thanks. He looked down at Blaze, who was lying under the table, chin resting on his paws. Blaze did the work. I just followed. Don't sell yourself short, Reyes said. You made the call to keep searching. You trusted your dog when others might have given up. That takes courage, that takes heart. After dinner, Reyes and Cruz stepped outside onto the porch. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Blaze lay at Cruz's feet, his head resting on his paws, eyes half closed in contentment. Reyes leaned against the railing, his arms crossed, staring out at the valley. Thomas wants to meet you, Reyes said quietly. Properly. He's been asking about you since he got out of the hospital. Cruz nodded. I'd like that. He's planning something, Reyes continued. Won't tell me what, but he's got that look in his eye, the one people get when they've been given a second chance and they want to make it count. He glanced at Cruz. I think you're going to like what he has to say. The wind picked up, carrying with it the scent of pine and rain-soaked earth. Cruz breathed it in, feeling something shift inside him, a sense of purpose, of connection. These people, Thomas, Daniel, Elena, Reyes, they weren't just survivors. They were family now, bound together by tragedy, by rescue, by the thread of life that could have so easily been cut but wasn't. There's something else, Reyes said, his voice dropping. Daniel wants to do something for Blaze. He's been talking about it non-stop, wants to raise money for the K9 unit, buy new equipment, help train more rescue dogs. He smiled. Kid's got a good heart. You inspired him. Cruz felt his throat tighten. I didn't do anything special. You showed up, Reyes said simply. When it mattered most, you showed up, and so did your dog. That's everything. The next day, Cruz drove to Thomas Mercer's temporary apartment. The sun was bright, the air clean and crisp after days of rain. The town was slowly returning to normal, shops reopening, children playing in the parks, life resuming its familiar rhythm. But there were still scars, empty lots where houses used to stand, fences torn down, roads under repair, reminders of what had been lost and what still needed to be rebuilt. Thomas answered the door with a smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. He looked stronger now, his color returning, though he still moved carefully, favoring his left side where the ribs had been bruised. Cruz, come in, and bring that magnificent dog of yours. The apartment was sparse but clean, with a few boxes stacked in the corner and a single armchair by the window. A small table held a laptop, a notebook, and several printed pages covered in handwriting. Thomas gestured for Cruz to sit, then pulled up a folding chair for himself. Blaze lay down between them, his eyes half closed, content. Thomas reached out and patted Blaze's head, his touch gentle, reverent. This is the hero, huh? Cruz smiled. He did all the work. Thomas laughed, a warm, genuine sound. I don't believe that for a second. He leaned back in his chair, his expression growing more serious. I wanted to thank you, properly, for what you did. You didn't have to keep looking. You didn't have to push as hard as you did, but you didn't give up on us. I wasn't going to leave you down there, Cruz said simply. Thomas nodded, his eyes distant for a moment. When I was in that crawl space, trapped under all that weight, I kept thinking about my life, about the things I'd done, the mistakes I'd made, about my late wife, Sarah, about all the years we had together and all the years I've had without her. He paused, his voice thickening. I kept thinking I deserved it, that maybe this was how it was supposed to end. An old man, alone, buried in the dirt. Cruz leaned forward. No one deserves that. Maybe not, Thomas said. But in that moment it felt like justice, like the universe balancing the scales. He looked at Cruz. And then I heard that bark, clear as a bell, and I realized someone cared. Someone was fighting for me, even if I didn't think I deserved it. His eyes filled with tears. You gave me a reason to keep going. You gave me hope. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Cruz didn't know what to say. He'd never been good with emotions, with the big moments that required the right words. So he just nodded, hoping Thomas understood. Thomas wiped his eyes and straightened up, his expression shifting to something more determined. That's why I wanted to talk to you. I've been thinking a lot since the rescue, about what matters, about how I want to spend whatever time I have left. He gestured to the papers on the table. I'm starting a foundation, a non-profit, to support search and rescue teams across the region, training programs, equipment, medical care for the dogs, whatever they need. Cruz's eyes widened. Thomas, it's the least I can do, Thomas interrupted. I've got some money saved, insurance from the house, a pension, and I've got time. I may not be able to dig through Rubble anymore, but I can write checks. I can make calls. I can help make sure that what you and Blaze did for us can happen for other people, for other families. Cruz felt a lump forming in his throat. That's incredible. Thomas smiled. I'm calling it the Second Chance Foundation, because that's what you gave me. What you gave Daniel, a second chance. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object wrapped in tissue paper. And I wanted to give you this, as a thank you. Cruz unwrapped the paper carefully. Inside was a small wooden carving, a German shepherd, intricately detailed, sitting alert and proud. The craftsmanship was beautiful, every line and curve capturing the essence of a working dog. I carved it myself, Thomas said. Been working with wood since I was a boy. It's not much, but it's perfect, Cruz said, his voice rough. He turned the carving over in his hands, admiring the work. Thank you. Thomas stood, and Cruz stood with him. They shook hands, and then impulsively Thomas pulled Cruz into a hug. Thank you, he whispered, for everything. When Cruz left the apartment, the wooden carving carefully tucked into his jacket pocket, he felt something shift inside him, a sense of closure, of purpose. He looked down at Blaze, who was trotting beside him, tail wagging. We did good, boy. We did real good. Blaze barked once, sharp and clear, and Cruz smiled. Over the following weeks, Thomas's foundation began to take shape. He reached out to other rescue organizations, attended town council meetings, met with donors and volunteers. Daniel became his assistant, helping with research, organizing fundraisers, spreading the word through social media. The boy threw himself into the work with fierce determination, as if channeling his trauma into something positive, something that could help others. The first fundraiser was held at the community center, a dinner and auction with donated items from local businesses. Cruz attended reluctantly, uncomfortable with the attention, but Thomas insisted. When Cruz walked in with Blaze, the room erupted in applause. People stood clapping, some with tears in their eyes. Daniel ran up to Cruz, his face beaming. We raised $15,000. Can you believe it? 15,000! He dropped to his knees and hugged Blaze. This is because of you, because of what you did. Cruz felt overwhelmed. He'd never wanted recognition, never sought praise. But looking around the room at the faces of people who'd been touched by the rescue, who wanted to help, who believed in the mission, he realized this was bigger than him. This was about community, about resilience, about turning tragedy into hope. Thomas approached, leaning on his cane, his smile wide. This is just the beginning, he said. We're going to make a difference. We're going to save lives. And Cruz believed him. 6 months later, the town of Greenridge held a ceremony to honor the first responders who had worked during the landslide disaster. The community center was packed. Families, friends, local officials, reporters. A stage had been set up at the front, decorated with banners and flowers. The mayor stood at the podium, giving a speech about resilience, about community, about the importance of coming together in times of crisis. Cruz sat in the back, Blaze at his feet. He wore his dress uniform, the one he only pulled out for occasions like this. He felt uncomfortable, out of place, but when the mayor called his name, he stood and walked to the stage. The crowd erupted in applause. Cruz felt his face flush. He wasn't used to this. The mayor handed him a plaque, brass, heavy, engraved with his name and the words, "Heroism in the line of duty." She shook his hand, then gestured for him to say a few words. Cruz stepped up to the microphone, his hands gripping the edges of the podium. He looked out at the crowd, at the faces of the people he'd grown up with, worked with, protected. He saw Thomas Mercer in the front row, Daniel beside him, both smiling. He saw Captain Reyes and Elena, their eyes shining with pride. Cruz cleared his throat. "I'm not good with speeches," he said, his voice rough. A few people laughed. "But I want to say this. What happened that day, it wasn't about me. It was about the team, the paramedics, the engineers, the volunteers, everyone who showed up, who risked their lives to help. They're the real heroes." He paused, looking down at Blaze. The dog sat perfectly still, his eyes on Cruz, waiting. "And this guy right here, Blaze, he's the one who found Thomas and Daniel. He's the one who didn't give up. He's the one who knew they were down there when no one else did." Cruz's voice cracked. "So if you're going to thank anyone, thank him." The crowd erupted in applause again, louder this time. People stood, clapping, cheering. Cruz stepped down from the stage, Blaze following close behind. As he walked back to his seat, people reached out, patting him on the back, thanking him. Cruz nodded, smiled, kept moving. He just wanted to get out of there. But before he could leave, Daniel ran up to him, Elena close behind. The boy threw his arms around Cruz's waist, hugging him tight. "Thank you," Daniel whispered, "for everything." Cruz knelt down, placing a hand on Daniel's shoulder. You're welcome, kid. Take care of yourself and take care of Mr. Mercer. Daniel nodded, then turned to Blaze, wrapping his arms around the dog's neck. Blaze's tail wagged, and for a moment, everything else faded away. It was just a boy and a dog, a connection forged in darkness, in fear, in survival. Elena smiled at Cruz, her eyes wet. You gave me my son back. I'll never be able to repay that. Cruz stood, his throat tight. You don't have to. Just live well. That's enough. Thomas approached, leaning on his cane, moving slowly but steadily. He extended his hand, and Cruz took it. The Foundation's funded 6 new K9 units, Thomas said. We've trained 12 new handlers. We've donated equipment to 8 fire departments across 3 states. His voice swelled with pride. And it's all because of what happened that day. Because you didn't give up. Cruz smiled. You did this, Thomas. You and Daniel. You took something terrible and made it beautiful. Thomas's eyes filled with tears. A legacy built on hope, on second chances, on people like you who refuse to give up. He glanced at Blaze, and dogs like him who won't stop searching. As the ceremony wound down and people began to leave, Cruz found himself standing outside under the stars. The night was clear, the air cool. Blaze sat beside him, calm and content. Cruz looked up at the sky, at the countless points of light scattered across the darkness, and felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. He thought about the landslide, about the fear and chaos of that day. He thought about Thomas and Daniel, trapped in darkness, running out of time. He thought about the moment Blaze had alerted, the certainty in the dog's eyes, the way everything had come together, and he thought about all the people who'd been touched by what happened, the families who'd contributed to the Foundation, the handlers being trained, the future rescues that would happen because Thomas had decided to turn his second chance into something meaningful. Cruz knelt beside Blaze, running his hand through the dog's thick fur. I know what you did, boy. You didn't just save 2 lives, you started something bigger, something that's going to keep saving lives for years to come. Blaze looked up at him, those amber eyes reflecting the starlight, and Cruz saw intelligence there, understanding, a bond that went beyond words, beyond training, beyond anything that could be easily explained. Ready to go home? Cruz asked. Blaze barked once, sharp, clear, and together they walked into the night. 2 souls bound by purpose, by duty, by an unbreakable commitment to never give up. Because sometimes heroes don't wear capes or badges. Sometimes they have 4 paws and a heart that refuses to stop searching. Sometimes they're the ones who bark in the darkness, who dig through the rubble, who remind us that even when everything falls apart, hope survives. Thomas stood on the steps of the community center, watching Cruz and Blaze disappear into the night. Daniel stood beside him, his hand resting on the old man's arm. Do you think they know? Daniel asked quietly. How much they changed everything? Thomas smiled. I don't think they do it for recognition. I think they do it because it's who they are. Because when someone needs help, they answer. No questions asked. Daniel nodded, his eyes distant. I want to be like that someday. Like Cruz. Like Blaze. You already are, son, Thomas said. The moment you came back to check on me during the storm, you became that person. You put someone else's safety before your own. That's what heroes do. They stood together in the cool night air, 2 survivors bound by tragedy and rescue, watching the stars and thinking about second chances, about how close they'd come to losing everything, about how grateful they were to still be here, still breathing, still able to make a difference. Inside the community center, Eleanor and Captain Reyes cleaned up from the ceremony, folding chairs and collecting programs. Eleanor paused, holding one of the programs, staring at the photo of Cruz and Blaze on the cover. You know, she said quietly, I used to think miracles were things that happened in stories, in movies, not in real life. Reyes looked at his sister. And now? Now I know they're real, she said, her voice thick with emotion. They just come on 4 paws instead of wings. Reyes smiled and put his arm around her shoulders. Yeah, they do. In the face of disaster, when the world collapses around us, it's easy to feel lost, to feel hopeless, to wonder if anyone will come looking. But the truth is, there are people and animals who will never stop searching, who will dig through the rubble, who will fight through the storm, who will risk everything to bring you home. Thomas Mercer and Daniel Reyes were buried under 20 feet of mud and stone. They were trapped in darkness, running out of air, running out of time. But they survived, not because of luck, not because of chance. They survived because one man refused to give up. and one dog refused to stop searching. Loyalty isn't just a word, it's an action, a choice, a commitment to never leave someone behind. And sometimes that loyalty, that love, can move mountains, or in this case, 20 feet of rubble. Blaze didn't just save 2 lives that day. He reminded an entire town what it means to care, what it means to fight for each other, what it means to be a hero, because heroes don't always stand on 2 legs. Sometimes they walk on 4 paws, and sometimes that's all the world needs. A heart that refuses to quit, a spirit that won't give up, a soul that keeps searching no matter what. That's the lesson. That's the legacy. That's what saves lives. The Second Chance Foundation continues to grow, touching lives across the region. Every dog trained, every handler certified, every piece of equipment purchased, all of it traces back to one moment, one rescue, one dog who wouldn't stop searching. Thomas Mercer lived to see his foundation save 17 lives in its first 2 years. Daniel went on to become a firefighter himself, inspired by the man and dog who saved him. And Cruz, he continued doing what he always did, showing up, training, responding, saving lives, because that's what heroes do. They show up. They don't quit. They search until they find, and sometimes that's the greatest gift anyone can give, the gift of not giving up, the gift of hope, the gift of a second chance.